بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
Assalamu alaikum. It is Wednesday, the 20th of October, 2021. And in our series, Reflections on the Holy Quran, this is broadcast number 267. We are discussing, considering, looking at the meanings of the words of verse 93 of Al-Baqarah, the second chapter of the Holy Quran. So, and as you know, we take these words by word and try and see what guidance we can glean from the Holy Quran about these things. Just to remind you that these broadcasts are brought to you by the Lahore Ahmadiyya community, which is known as the Lahore Ahmadiyya movement, Ahmadiyya Anjuman, and Ahmadiyya Anjuman Islam, which was created by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib. And he taught us that although other Muslims believe that a prophet can come after the Holy Prophet Muhammad, this is incorrect, because the Holy Quran says about the Holy Prophet Muhammad that he is Khatamun Nabiyyin. And the Holy Prophet explained this verse of the Holy Quran by saying that Ana Khatamun Nabiyyin La Nabi Abadi, that I am Khatamun Nabiyyin and I am the last prophet. He did not sort of say new prophet, old prophet, etc. He just said, I am the last prophet. End of story. So Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad said that no prophet, old or new, can now come in the light of the Holy Quran and the Hadith of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this naturally gave rise to a question which Sahaba Raziullah Ta'ala Anhum asked, and that was that when a prophet appeared among a people, then shortly after that prophet's death, those people went astray again. And we see this in the story of Moses that we're discussing, that Moses goes away for a few days and the Israelites start disobeying God. So the Holy Prophet said that, well, prophets can't come, but God will send reformers, mujaddideen. And some people say, well, anyone who does good work can become a mujaddid and so on. But if two people who are very pious and so on, they're doing good work, but their views are diametrically opposite each other, who will you believe? Which one will you believe? This is why it is important that God appoints the Mujaddid and guides him through his revelation to bring Muslims back to Sirat al-Mustaqim. Now, the Holy Prophet also made another statement, which Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad stressed. See, these days we're very keen to say to people, you're kafir, you're heretic, you're out of fold of Islam, you're this, you're that. All slight differences. And maybe differences are major, it doesn't matter. The Holy Prophet had said that if one reciter of the kalima says to another reciter of the kalima that you are not a Muslim, you are a kafir, then this statement of heresy turns back and falls upon the person who issued it. Basically, Muslims should not issue fatwas, rulings of anyone's heresy. That is up to God to decide, not for us. And Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad also said that people say that part of prophetic revelation, like the Ayah Rajam, Surah Walayat, and so on, have been left out of the Holy Quran. He said that is incorrect because God has said, about the Holy Quran, that I have revealed it and I am a guardian over it. So if God is protecting the Holy Quran, how can it be that some verses of the Holy Quran are left out and no one knows? It is impossible. Similarly, excuse me, my throat is getting dry. Similarly, generally Muslims say that some verses of the Holy Quran have been abrogated, cancelled. And Hazrat Shah Waliullah, he says that Muslims say more than 500, I think it's 512 verses are abrogated. And he said, I have investigated them. But even Hazrat Shah Waliullah says that there are 7 verses which are abrogated. But Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad said that no verse of the Holy Quran, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad said, no verse of the Holy Quran was or is or ever shall be abrogated, cancelled. All the verses that we find in the Holy Quran, they are effective. And lastly, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad stressed that jihad is the duty of every single Muslim. But he stressed that for definition of jihad, we have to go to the Holy Prophet Muhammad, not to some seminary, not to some scholars and whatever. And the Holy Prophet Muhammad said, when returning from fighting, that Muslims are returning from minor jihad to major jihad. And then he went on to explain what major jihad is. He said major jihad is jihad bin nafs, a struggle against your own inner self, your own desires. That is the biggest jihad. These are the words of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. So Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad said that a Muslim must conduct this jihad continuously. So let us turn to the verse of the Holy Quran, Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 93. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإذ أخذنا ميثاقكم ورفعنا فوقكم الطور خذوا ما آتيناكم بقوة واسمعوا قالوا سمعنا وعصينا وأشربوا في قلوبهم العجل بكفرهم قل بئس ما يأمركم به إيمانكم إن كنتم مؤمنين. And when we made a covenant with you, this is Allah talking to the Israelites. And when we made a covenant with you and raised the mountain above you, take hold of that which we have given you with firmness and obey. They said, we hear and disobey. And they were made to imbibe the love of the calf into their hearts on account of their disbelief. Say, evil is that which your faith bids you if you are believers. So, yesterday we looked at the words imanukum, and today we're going to look at the word kuntum. And tomorrow we look at the word mu'minin, and that will conclude our discussion of verse 98 of chapter Al-Baqarah. Okay. Let us see the root of this word, which occurs in the Holy Quran a large number of times, is Kaf Wa Nun. And it occurs in the Holy Quran 1390 times. But only in three forms. So it only has three different meanings. Kana, Makan, and Makanat. 1358 times, Kana, 27 times, Makan, and the last word, the third one, is just 5 times. This is the equivalent of the English word, the verb is, was. That's called the verb to be. Chapter 2, verse 10 says, Bima Kanu Yakzibun. They did. They used to. Then we have Vama Kanu Muhtadin, which is chapter 2, verse 16. Were they? Then you have chapter 2, verse 23. Which says, Wa in kuntum fi raibim. You are. So you can see it means you are, you were, and so on. You would have been. And the verse that we're looking at means you are. And as I said, its root, triliteral root is Kaf, Wa, Nun. And now, although it expresses the past tense, Kana, we have to remember one thing. We have verses like Wakana Allahu bikulli shay'in alima, chapter 33, verse 40. So God knows everything. But when it's an attribute of God that that you're speaking about, then this word means from the very beginning. Because you can't have God who's learning. You know, it's not like going to school that you do GCSEs and then, having done those, you then start A levels and you learn more. And then you do A levels and you go on to university and you learn even more. And God knows everything and He has known everything from the beginning. It's not that He's learned anything. So here, Wakan Allahu. And we're talking about God knowing everything. It is, He has always known, forever. And that's an important point to remember. Otherwise, you could be mistaken about attributes of God. Now, many times it's used to connect an adjective to a noun. And if that happens, then that means that they go together all the time. For example, Bakanal insanu kafura, chapter 17, verse 60. Man is ungrateful. I found it interesting that here when you translate the verse man is ungrateful, the correct translation, I guess, should be human species is ungrateful. Homo sapiens are ungrateful. But anyway, most translations of the Holy Quran say man is ungrateful. But women have never led a campaign to say that, look, we are ungrateful as well. So this translation of the verse is incomplete. Women should be included in that. Should say men and women are ungrateful. They keep strangely quiet when this verse is translated in this way. Chapter 17, verse 100. Wakanal insanu katura. And a human's heart is constrained. Basically saying that human beings are mean creatures. وَقَانَ الْإِنسَانُ أَكْثَرَ شَيْءٍ جَدَلًا. Chapter 18, verse 54. And Homo sapiens, human beings, are more disruptive, argumentative than anything else in creation. So these attributes then get attached to the noun al-insan. But sadly, you remember I read out the verse, chapter 17, verse 60, that Homo sapiens, human beings are ungrateful. And it says in chapter 17, verse 27, وَقَانَ الشَّيْطَانُ لِرَبِّهِ كَفُورًا. And what does that mean? That Satan, the devil, denies blessings of his creator. So human beings have something in common with Satan, with Shaitan, that they're both ungrateful. And the reason that I stressed, I should have perhaps said this earlier on, the reason that I've stressed that when this past tense is used in relation to God, it means, for eternity, from beginning to end, is that when we're talking about the past tense, then over a passage of time, things change. You have a baby, and then it becomes a toddler, and then it becomes an infant, and then it becomes a boy or a girl, and then man or a woman, and then an old man and old woman, and so on. And visible changes take place. People get taller, they get heavier, they get forgetful, they lose strength, they can't walk as far as they used to be able to do, and all that kind of thing. So, but of course, when we're talking about God, and that's the important thing to remember, there is never any change in God's attributes. God's attributes are exactly the same as they were at creation. And a major attribute was that he knew everything. He still knows everything. I forget things, but God doesn't forget things. So, but another interesting use here of this word, kana, we all know the incident that Jesus ﷺ is born, and he starts to preach against what the rabbis are teaching at their practices and so on. And the rabbis get very upset, and they go to Mary. And they complain. You come from a nice family. Well, what's this? And Mary points to Jesus. Now, the rabbis, they said this: Kaifa nukallimu man kana fil mahdi sabiyya. And what they're saying is, well, how can we discuss this with a babe in arms. And many people take this to mean that Jesus literally was in Mary's arms. But this dictionary called Mufradat Alfazul Quran, which is not an Ahmadi dictionary of the words of the Holy Quran, says this verse can be interpreted in two different ways. One, to say that a baby is literally physically in mother's arms. And the other one is that, he's much younger in age. And I illustrate this with an example. In Pakistan, they have something called, in India as well, called the Panchayat system. And what it is that in a small area, particularly if it doesn't have courts and all this kind of thing, some elders of a village or whatever, they constitute a kind of a committee called Panchayat. And what it does is, if two neighbors are fighting about something, they'll go to the Panchayat, and Panchayat will decide. And generally what you find is that it's the elders of the village who constitute the Panchayat. There might be 70, there might be 80, there might be 60, and so on. This is a real incident that a Panchayat was discussing something, and a man who was about 45 years of age, he stood up to say something, because these are open meetings. There's no closed door meeting. And he said something, and his father got up and slapped him across the face. And he said, the elders are discussing the problem, and this babe in arms wants to tell us what we should be doing. Now, this man is 45, and his father is saying, this babe in arms. So when we talk about babe in arms, do we literally mean a baby, physically a baby, and the mother holding that baby in her arms? Or do we just mean someone much younger in age than us? And this dictionary says, well, it can mean either. And Ahmadis say that it wasn't literally a baby that Mary was carrying in her arms. This is metaphorical. That because he was much younger than the rabbis, they said, well, just like this guy's father, who slapped him and told him to shut up, although he was 45, etc. And, he lived in England and he'd gone back, and those gentlemen hadn't been out of their village maybe all their lives. But even so, he was a babe in arm and not authorized to speak. And this is what the rabbis said. Well, you want us to talk to him? A babe in arms. It doesn't mean to say that Jesus didn't have a father, or he could speak when he was in the, in the cradle, so to speak, etc. So, and the last point I want to make is that sometimes people, rather than look at what is being said, start saying, well, what's your sect, what's your firqa, which imam do you follow in jurisprudence, and so on. Remember Hazrat Ali Raziyallahu Ta'ala's instructions. He said, don't look at who's saying it, look at what is being said. With that, I take my leave of you. Inshallah, God willing, we will meet again tomorrow at the same time and take our discussion further. Assalamu alaikum, Khuda Hafiz. Goodbye.